Does anybody want to say anything before I mute you? And of course, always please unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. You do not need to stay muted. It's a beautiful day. Shall we get started?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay, you go there. I'm green.
Not muted.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm just going to share interesting things that might be a little bit kooky as I learn them. And some of them are backed in science, and some of them have not totally been proven yet, so you have to be able to feel it for yourself. But in one of the books that I've been reading, one of the enlightened teachers has people wear bangles, some kind of a metal bracelet, copper, gold, silver, something that conducts electricity. And one of the beliefs about that is that our bodies are made of light, and each cell is a little bit of a battery, and that the electromagnetic frequencies that are around us impact that energy field and each of our cells. And that if you are wearing a metal necklace, bracelet, some kind of stone, that it has a charge that affects the energetic system of your body. And that often when people were sick and would come to this healer, he would tell them to go to a jeweler and get a bangle because they had an interruption in their energy system and they needed some kind of grounding. So I have been experimenting a little bit with wearing one, and I had a friend who called me when she had tachycardia happening, and I said, go grab one of your bangles and see if it just helps you, and it like took it away immediately. So I'm just sharing the anecdotal experience, but I think it's interesting to have a reason to be wearing something that actually is influencing your energy field. So try it out, check it out, and see. And it also makes me really aware how many of us have not chosen to live in cities where certainly the amount of electromagnetic frequency that you're exposed to on a regular basis is much greater than we are here. So we're already doing good things for our bodies. Feet on the floor, knees bent. Get right here, feel your feet on the ground. Take a deep breath and feel the air come into your lungs. How can you get present to whatever you're experiencing right here, right now? Take another deep breath, allow it to move, and just start to assess your body and notice if you have bones that feel a little turned one way or the other, or differences between the right and left as you stand there. And just know that we're going to attempt to bring some symmetry and balance back to the system. We have muscles on the inside of our body, like our diaphragm and our psoas and our pelvic floor and our deep neck flexors. And then we have muscles that move toward the outside, like our lateral hip muscles and our inside leg muscles on the inside that help pull or stabilize our body in space inside and outside. And then we have more even farther out muscles, quads and hamstrings and biceps and triceps, and they all influence how our body hangs in space. So really get rooted to the floor for a moment, and then start with some shrugs. Draw your shoulders back toward your spine a little bit and pull them up toward your ears. Let the whole shoulder blades slide. Make your torso as long as possible, and then press your shoulder blades down like you're doing an anti-shrug. Shrug them up and press them down. And just begin to notice, what's the relationship between your arm bone and your shoulder blade and your shoulder blade and your spine? Find those middle back muscles. That middle back area is often tight for many of us. We actually don't use those mid-trap muscles right back here for a lot of us as well as we could. Check the position of your head as it sits over your shoulders. And then let's go into the deepest muscles in your arm bone and just roll your arms down and underneath and back. Do that without letting the shoulder go anywhere. So arm bone rotation, and just notice, how is it from one side to the other? Does one arm roll more than the other? I've got some clicks and pops in there as I do that. You have some pieces that could affect the position of that arm bone. Some of us have little labral tears, the connective tissue between the arm bone and the shoulder that may not let the shoulder stabilize quite as well as it does. So there's muscles that compensate to help stabilize the shoulder. That can change the position of the arm bone a little bit in that shoulder socket, and it just makes the movement slightly less precise. So we want to go back and tell the muscles exactly what to do so we regain that precise action in the joint. Open your arms all the way up and bring them back in. All the way out, all the way in. And again, as you go back, feel the muscles on the back side of your shoulder. So we rotate with rotator cuff muscles, and then find the muscles on that back side underneath the shoulder blade that helps hold that back into position, and bring it back in. Out and in. Out and in. Good, and then one at a time, bring them up into like a cactus position. Reach one arm all the way up to the sky and then bring it down, and the other one up to the sky. So this is using one side of your body differently than the other. And just notice, I could just see myself in the screen as I did that. My torso actually wanted to go somewhere. So keep a little stability as you bring the arm bone up and down so that your spine actually isn't moving right now. All the way up, all the way down. The psoas from the back of your hips all the way to the front of your leg, that gets to begin to stabilize. Excellent. Let's do some wrist movement. So now that we have the shoulders into a better position, actually, let's go elbows first. Bring your hands up like you're holding on to a plate or a bowl of soup, and then dump it out. Bring it back up, scoop it back in, dump it out. Find where your shoulders can just relax, and then take a deep breath, and let's do this 10 more times, under and up. Keep your wrist stable and straight as you just move the elbow. You have 3 muscles deep in your elbow that work to do that rotation. Shoulder blades keep moving down and away from your spine, stabilizing in that position. That mid-trap can turn on a little bit, and you might even feel your butt muscles come on slightly. If your shoulder blades can move down your back, we can have a slight activation of both sides of your glutes just in standing. But the psoas has to lengthen enough for that to happen. Good, now go wrist. Big wrist movements. Down and up. We want to be able to load that wrist, but you have to be able to get that wrist in a good position so that the arm bone and wrist and shoulder all can be in that good alignment so that your bones can move into a place where they can be loaded. Otherwise, if it can't even get there, sometimes when we load it, we're actually creating some inflammatory stuff in there, and that's not so good. So really pull back, do some finger work, curl your fingers down, and then spread them back out, all the way in, all the way out. Oh, I even just got a little pop in my low back from that. Good. And then let's take it down onto your hands and knees. We're going to stay with arms. You could be on your elbows here if your wrists really were not okay to be on them. But as long as you can be on your wrists for right now, then bring your arm into that cactus position. Feel your body stabilize at your trunk. And then bring your elbow down to the middle and then up to the ceiling. And we want to lift with your fingernails and your elbow so that we're sure to turn that mid-trap area on. Lift and lower. Lift and lower. And then switch. Out and down 10 times. Feel that middle back stabilize. And then bring that arm up. This time reach over your head and pull it back down. So you're going to do that same arm glide that we did standing, except for your hips are now in hip flexion and you're having to stabilize in a really different way, out and down. Switch. Reach away from you, pull it down. Notice how that shoulder is working compared to the other one. Does it get tired in a different spot? How are you compensating between the hip and the shoulder? And the hip and the shoulder are very much connected. So if you have a hip that's sitting out of position, it might be influencing the thoracic back or vice versa. Excellent. Both hands down, cats and dogs. Just bring some movement into your body. If there's any discomfort or pain, don't go too far into it so we're not picking the scab. Round and arch. All right, come down into your elbows just so we can get off our wrists into that position. And then you're gonna lift one arm up, make a huge circle with that shoulder around. So you have to be pretty functional. It's definitely a lot of work. Feel that arm rotate in a big circle up and around and down. Let's go 5 circles one way, 5 circles the other way. Stabilizing with your spine. Get super square between your hips and your shoulders, even though you're moving that arm. And you're having to balance on 3 points. Reverse that direction. And switch sides. 5 times backwards, 5 times forwards. We're shortening that lever, so we're directing a lot of work right into that shoulder area. Reverse. And release. Come down onto your back. Let all of that just relax down to the floor. And let's go to hips. So let's keep this idea of pelvic stabilization a little bit now. I want you to drop your right leg out to the side, but nothing else gets to move. So that hip gets to go all the way out and then come all the way back in, but there's no movement between your ribs and your hips. So you should have slight curve in your low back, curve in your neck, and then you can even put your hands right on, I have one thumb on the base of my rib cage and on the base of my fingers on my ASIS bones, the bony bumps in the front of your hips. And that as you drop that hip out, your torso doesn't go anywhere. Let's do that 10 times. Good, so we're beginning to access those deep muscles in and around your pelvis. Go to the other side, out and in, out and in. And then the first leg, drop it all the way out, straight leg, thigh tight, rotate the leg out and in. Again, keeping everything here stable. Ribs and pelvis not going anywhere while the leg bone gets to do that rotation. Find muscles deep in your hip. Try to get that leg to go all the way out. Try to touch the pinky toe to the floor and then rotate it all the way in. Try to get the big toe toward the floor. It probably won't go all the way down, but get that at least 45 degrees over and out. And then switch sides. Keeping your ribs and hips stable. Take that out and in. 10 rotations. Thigh tight. In the hip. Using the muscles in the hip. As you go out, you're using those deep six. The inside leg muscles have to open and let go a little bit. And then when you rotate that leg in, the medial glute medius and minimus and adductor are all your rotators that direction. Out and in. So inside and outside hip as you go in. Excellent. Now come up to kneeling. So I've been really liking using kneeling as work for your quads and hip flexors. Just hanging out in this position, especially if you want to start kind of here and you feel that tightness, that over time of just hanging out here, asking these muscles to be in this working lengthened position, we get them to get the message that they need to let go. So you move more toward a neutral pelvic position where your glutes can actually show back up to the party a little bit. So put your block between your ankles and hang out there. If you need to pad your knees, please do so. But feel, as you get into that position, you can even feel your own hip bones and say, are they even in level, or do you still have one hip bone that's being pulled by a quad or the hip flexor that feels like it's lower than the other one. Mine still on my right side feels like it's a bit lower. So I know that that side of my pelvis and tailbone has to really open up to be able to just get into the same position where my pelvic floor can activate, my adductor can activate, and my glutes can work. So let's just go hands behind your head. Hands behind your head, pull your elbows way back, and then feel your big toes against your block and press in on that block until you can get your butt muscles to activate. So feel them all the way, squeeze in, and you might even work your pelvic floor here a little bit, those muscles that stop your pee on the inside of the pelvic bowl. See if you can activate those and draw them up, and that will help the pelvis tip into that neutral position, and then release. Squeeze the muscles on the inside of your legs or at the bottom of your feet. Get it all the way up to activate deep in your hip and release. Keep going. Let's do 20 of those. Relax your belly. The transverse abdominis can be somewhat active. So if you notice that your pelvis does still want to be really far down like this and the abdominals are lengthened, you could draw the tailbone down a little bit and activate transverse abdominis, the muscle that if you poke your fingers into your sides, that you push those fingers out, and that would help the quad or hip flexor lengthen because it knows that it's got a stabilization mechanism happening. So stay there, try that. Access your transverse abdominis, but still be able to breathe, and see if that changes whatever's going on for you around one of your hips. Squeeze, release. Now, if extension feels okay to you at all, see if you can just lean back a little bit, make those quads lengthen a little bit more, tuck your tailbone under, find your butt muscles, and then come back to neutral. If that hurt your back at all, please don't do that. If it does feel okay, do it again. Go back just a little bit. Feel your quads and hip flexors. Feel your abdominals stabilize for you. Tuck your tailbone and come back up. Good. And then one more set of squeezes. Squeeze and release on that block. Try one more move here. See if you can grab each elbow or tuck your hands behind you so you're in internal rotation, elbow to elbow, or you could even do like a prayer pose behind you. That would be big shoulder opener. But if you have one shoulder that's still influencing the position of a hip, or a hip that's influencing the position of a shoulder, changing that shoulder position, you might even feel a cramp or feel that need to move. And then go after those glutes one more time. You can see in this position, if you have knees that turn in or out, it's pretty difficult to have them be really out of position right now as we work this. Okay, release out of that. Stay here one more. Try to pick your foot off the floor and feel your hamstrings. Access your hamstring and then release it down. Other side. Pick your foot off the floor. You might get a cramp. I'm going to warn you. As that hamstring activates and it's like, whoa, hello. Activate it. Find those deep muscles inside your knee. Release it down. Couple more on each side. come down onto your belly. We're gonna stay with this position a little bit. Bend your knees. If that's too much extension for your back, please put a pillow under your belly or work to tuck your tailbone, lengthen your spine. Make sure that it's okay just being in this position. And for some of you, it may just take 1 or 2 breaths to be able to be okay in this position. But know that as soon as we bend the knees, if you have really tight quads or hip flexors, it's going to want to pull on your back. So just know that. Knees together, feet apart. Let that internal rotation happen at the hip joint. And then bring them all the way back together so they touch. All the way out. Flex your feet all the way in. Out. And in. Some of the muscles that help rotate your hip are better activated with a straight leg, and some of them are better activated when you're in hip flexion. So we're getting after some different aspects of the hip by, this one is hip extension versus hip flexion. Good, roll to your side. We're going to external rotation now. Both feet and knees together. Lift that knee high to the sky. And down. Lift. And lower. Lift. And lower. Ten more. Good. Bottom leg. Bend the knee. Put the heel on top of that knee. Top leg, foot down on the floor. Just hang out there. Feel that. Open that bottom hip. You can pull that leg in a little bit. Pull them a little closer. Just hang out and breathe. That's big external rotation. That would be almost like moving one leg into almost your lotus position. So you're loaded on that hip. It's a little different than being fully loaded and seated, but just play with that a little. And release out of that. Take your top leg all the way straight now. Go into an outer thigh lift. Keep everything pretty stable. Lift and lower. Let's do that 30 times just because we'll do one set only. Find those outer hip muscles. 10 more. Make them count. Awesome. Switch sides. Bend your knees, clamshells. Lift that leg up to the sky. Bring it back together so it touches. Lift and lower. Ten more. Awesome. Then top leg, foot to the floor, bottom leg, holding it up, working that bottom leg almost toward that kind of lotus position. Hold that ankle in as far as you can. Just breathe into that hip position. And release that out. Bottom leg bent, top leg out straight, 30 outer thigh lifts. Get it up there. Ten more. And release onto your back. Feet on the floor. Lift your hips off the floor. Feel the butt muscles and the back muscles all activate. You can press your hands down into the floor and do that little anti-shrug with your shoulders. So help your middle back turn on and come onto the party by bringing your shoulder blades away from your ears. Then lower your hips down to the floor and lift them right back up. Let's do that 10 times. And then other side, one side, so hold one leg up, 10 lifts, one leg at a time, get all the way up there, come down. Switch legs. And release, and then grab your block and place it between your knees and give me a set of 20 squeezes. You could also put your hands underneath your back a little bit so that you're keeping that space. That puts you into a big internal rotation in your shoulders. Just see if that feels okay. Squeeze and release. 20 squeezes. Notice if the right and left shoulder are feeling more similar. And release out of that. All right. Come all the way up to standing. Actually, seated. Sorry, one more time. Let's do one more hip thing here. So come into wide, one leg in, one leg out. Pull one leg up. We're going to go into deep internal rotation. So sit up tall. You can have your hands behind you if you want. You're going to take that right leg, put it all the way out to the side, and then rotate that hip so that it goes down, and then pull it back up. Internal rotation of that hip, letting it go all the way down, pulling it all the way back up. Awesome. Other side. Now, if you have pain in the medial knee, don't go so far. You could do this with just a little bit of an action and just get it to introduce that. Or if you had pain in the hip, again, we want to get some movement to happen without making it tighten up or picking the scab. Awesome. All the way up to standing. Up onto your toes. We're going to go arms forward or hands behind your head. Let's go hands behind your head. Squat down with your heels just hovering off the floor. If that feels like you're way out of balance, then go ahead and put your heels down. But if you can handle it, hover your heels off the floor. Shoulders back, elbows back. Go ahead and take it as far as your body will let you go. And then feel your butt and your hamstrings. Initiate that press back up. Good again. And if you just get to right here, that's totally fine too. Feel your big toes down on the floor. Feel the back side of your legs and come up. Again, pull those elbows back. Let your upper back stay open, thoracic extension, chalking all the way down to your middle and low back, and then pressing all the way back up. Good, a couple hip hinges. Feet on the floor, slight bend at your knees. Big hip hinge, get parallel to the floor. Find your butt muscles, pull you back to standing. Awesome, squeeze your glutes, maybe even a mini back bend. All the way over, bend the knees slightly, hip hinge over. Find your butt muscles, pull it back up. If you're like me, you might feel stuff happening all the way down your legs as your body tries to coordinate that action. Keep going, over, lift. Now, if you had pain at all when you hinged over, pay attention to that. levering your body like this requires a certain amount of stability in your trunk and not extra movement. If you have extension only in one place and you automatically feel pain when you're right here, don't do this yet. Your body's not ready for it. All the way over, all the way up. Use those big hinges as your levers. They are designed to go over and to come up much more than even that last move that we just did where your knees and thighs had to do that little squat action. All right, lateral flexion of the spine, arms out to the side, over to one side, up and over to the other. Feel that movement. If you have an easy wall to go to and you want to really feel how your body can be stable in space, go to it. Take your feet wider. Same thing. Wider again. Hug your legs to the midline. Over and up. And then here, down to one side a little bit, into one hip, bend down, open up that inside leg muscle, feel it move. We did a lot of hip work today, so now we want to integrate that into our body, over to one side, over to the other. Feel the quads work, feel the hamstrings work, feel the butt work. And walk it in. Air bench. Find a spot in your house for an air bench. And then go ahead and press your back to flat. Feel your lumbar spine move into flexion. See if you can go each vertebra at a time. You may have to engage pelvic floor, engage your glutes, engage your tailbone to get the pelvis to gently tip backwards on both sides so that you actually can get some movement in the lumbar spine into the middle back. And then you can come up. And as I come up, my low back is coming off the wall a tiny bit to be able to get my thoracic back to open. So find where that is for you. Maybe more of a neutral position here. And then really engage quads and hip flexors. Bring your head back to that wall. Toes up. Can activate the whole front of your thigh or front of your shin and your thigh. Get those to activate a little better. Press your toes down hard into the floor. Feel the back side of your legs turn on. And come on up. Okay, check your body again. Hopefully that feels more symmetrical, like everything's moving. You've got ability to bend, maybe a little backwards, a little forwards. You can feel your glutes. And then come down into whatever position you'd like to be in for our meditation. lying down, seated. So first, feel your body on the floor, wherever it is that's touching the floor. Now, we think of our bodies as solid masses. And that's often what our experience of our bodies are. But for a moment, see if you can begin to feel your body as tiny particles of stuff that lives on our body, viruses, bacteria, fungus that make up our body. There's more of them than there are of us. Tiny particles that make up muscles and bones. All of those materials are made up of individual atoms, molecules, and cells. Just start to break what we feel like as dense matter into more of its teeny tiny pieces. So kind of in your mind's eye, begin to let there be space between each of the particles that make up your body. And then know that each of those small particles has a little electrical charge. And that little electrical charge is responding to what's around it and the pull of gravity and the moon and the stars. All those individual cells are influenced by all these different pieces that are all within this space, this vast space. In our general waking life, we seem to be somewhat attached to this dense form. But as you can let those individual cells and pieces have the space in between it, notice the space. And if a thought arises in that space, notice that too. And then notice the part of you that's noticing all of that space. And then feel heart vibration in the space. And notice how that shifts or changes your experience. If you bring your attention to the energy of the sun, the vibration of the sun, how does that shift or change your awareness? And then feel the grounding energy of the earth and feel what that vibration does to the space. And then just drop back one more time. Don't try to feel or do or change anything. Don't make any effort at all. And experience what exists there. Notice you still have senses. Hearing is intact. Feeling intact. If you choose to open your eyes, even your vision is intact. Bring this space in a little bit. Allow the expansive space to draw in a little closer. Notice again the sensations that arise in your body as individual particles or small sensations that add to a feeling of density in our body. Feel that body resting on the ground. And then take a full deep breath and just experience that breath fully back in your body. And then begin to surface out of that. And if you'd like to check in, please do so.